And welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two unhinged females compulsively study history and then tell each other the history stories that they've only recently figured out and may have been compulsively getting the pronunciation of something moments before hitting record. I'm host number one. I did not try to figure out how to pronounce anything, so I am paying fast and loose. I'm Theresa, and that is Angie.
I am in fact the one that was just moments before we hit record confirming I did know how to pronounce this name. And you all are gonna think I am an absolute buffoon if you don't already when I go to tell you what this name was.
William Williamson.
Oh, you'll just have to wait. John Smith looking at you.
Mm. Joan Smythe?
S- Is this with a Y? Oh, there's an E. You pronounce the E at the end? Hmm,
Strange.
weird. Ah, it must be French.
Ah,
Hmm,
a friend of mine in high school, his last name was Muyesu.
okay.
It was like 13 letters long. I think it
Never
had
fit in
like,
the whole Scantron thing.
yeah, pretty much no. And he had, I think, at least one X in his name.
Of course he did.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
just like, it was one of those things. And every time anybody like we had a substitute, and it was going down roll call, and it was just like they would pause. He'd be like, "I'm here. It's me. You're gonna that train wreck of the last name. That's me.
Pick me. It's just go ahead.
You know
I
what?
know where you're going.
Yep.
My first name's Tim. Please tell me he had a really easy first name.
Steve.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. You can just call me Steven.
We called him Moose
I
because,
think every friend group had a moose.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hilarious. I've just been informed that my oldest son has a friend called Bear, and
Ah.
that makes me so happy. Like I don't know why, but I love listening to the younger generation's names. Like he also has a friend named Finn, and I swear every single one of them sounds like they're a character in a Percy Jackson novel, which seems fair.
Yeah, I mean, look at the parents, right? Like, look, we had
Yeah.
one job. We understood our assignments.
And we aced it, truly.
We're doing what we
Yeah.
can. The Lord's work.
Hmm. If you will. Hey, do you want to fight me for who goes first today?
I'll let you. I mean, because I went first last time. I kind of just want to sit back and do some needlepoint.
Okay. I was pointing out how I love that you do needlepoint. In fact, I was having this conversation while I was eating lunch, and that I wish I had a quiet hobby like yours, but my quiet hobby like
Is
yours is
screaming.
coloring. No, it's coloring or
Oh,
reading,
oh.
right? And either of those are going to result in me not paying attention to a single word you said. The amount of times that I've been coloring and the husband has tried to say something to me and I'm like, "Yeah, what? I'm sorry, what?
I only
Why
have
aren't you coloring?"
I only have one coloring book, and it's titled Mommy Drinks Because You Cry. And it is every page is just snarky things like or like a fun detailed image with like a snarky saying, and it is hilarious.
I love that for you. I print color pages off the intrawebs.
Ah,
So I have like steampunk Beauty and the Beast color pages.
I
And
love
they make
that.
me happy. And if you
Good.
wish to talk to me while I color, you too have to sit down and color. Like I'm like a child. Sit down, color with me. So it works. Anyway, okay. I'm just gonna, before I get to my sources, I'm going to say this. I suspect that you already know all about my individual.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna go for it anyway, hoping that either A, you know the whole story and you're just gonna take it away from me and run with it,
Okay.
or B, that I get to share this person with you for the first time.
You're not doing
Honestly,
Mary
I'm gonna be
Shelley,
pleased either way.
are you?
No, I'm not doing Mary Shelley.
Okay.
Are you doing Mary Shelley?
No. No.
Okay. No, I'm not doing Mary Shelley. I am doing Alice Lee Longworth.
Not ringing a single
Nay,
bell.
nay, Roosevelt.
Oh, oh, I didn't
Mhm.
know her married name.
It is Longworth. Longworth. Longworth.
This
And
is
no, that was
this is
not
the
the name I was Googling.
this is the first child where Roosevelt said, I can either run the country or manage my child. I cannot do both.
That's the one and only, one and the same, if you will.
We have exhausted the amount I know about her. Well, I know some of the shenanigans, but I legit don't know a ton. But she was on my
Yes.
to be done list.
So I had like this inkling in the back of my head that she was on your to be done list, and I was like, no, just take her off your list and wait for Theresa to do it. And then the other day I came across something. I don't even remember what it was. Oh, it was I was watching a TikTok and it reminded me of her because it was about her. And I was like, no, I have to do it. I cannot wait any longer. Like either Theresa knows and she's going to look at me and be like, damn it, that was my next week's story.
I
Or
mean, if I've been sleeping on her for 82 episodes, then it's fair game.
well, that was my very next thought was, okay, we've had quite a few handfuls of episodes now. If she was going to do her, I feel like she would have done her by now. I also feel like this individual and you would have gotten along like two peas in a pod, if I'm
Oh, yeah,
honest.
we would have been bail
Um,
mates.
for sure. And I love doing like I love it when you do a story totally thinking of me in mind. Like this, I have to do this because this is right up Angie's alley. Because the more I learned about her, the more I was like, I think this might actually be like Theresa might be the reincarnation of this woman. Like it's quite possible. Like,
Well, tell me more about
okay, so
previous me because past Teresa seems like a delight.
I think by the end of this, you're going to be high-fiving yourself. Um, my sources are the Theodore Roosevelt Center.org, um, a Smithsonian article called How Ellis Roosevelt's Escapades Captivated America, the National Park Service, because
I
of
mean,
course, why
look,
not?
for those of you with your bingo cards at home, just go ahead and cross off the center square, which is going to be the Park Service.
Yep, as a fact, it is always the Park Service. A famouspeople.com article, which just kind of had a really streamlined timeline of her life. The New York Times had a really great article by Thomas Malone in November of 2007 that was not only about Alice herself, but about her most current biographer at the time, Stacey Cordray. So I thought that article had a lot of really great information, so I definitely wanted to share that. Whitehousehistory.org, which I have to say when I mention them, we know when you and I think you've done this multiple times when you're learning one thing and then you immediately are like add that to the list of something else I need to learn.
Yep.
Whitehousehistory.org had one of those articles. Like as
Okay.
soon as I saw hers, I was like, and what's this? Like I
But
must learn all of this information.
when you missaid white out history, I'm like, that's a very different website that we can't cover history from that site. I've never been there, but I'm going to take a shot in the dark and just say absolutely not. We'll put white out
First of all,
history with Reddit.
I didn't even know I said that wrong. It is whitehousehistory.org. Uh, for my correction's sake, and I will not be visiting the Whiteout History website at all. If that exists, count me as not a user. Um, and a couple of other fun articles. A court and also the Columbia Alumni Association had a really fun write-up called Hissing Cousins, the lifelong rivalry of Eleanor Roosevelt and Alice Roosevelt Longworth. So if you have
Hissing?
a chance to peruse hissing like
Okay, so
Hissing,
not the kissing. This is the
no,
okay, I am here for
the
this.
hissing,
Yes.
right? Okay. So all that to say, Our girl, Alice Lee Roosevelt, was born February 12th, 1884. She was the first and only child to be born to Theodore Roosevelt and Alice Hathaway Lee. Um, our girl Alice had the quintessential terrible Victorian childhood. I'm just gonna say that. Like exactly what you expect at the beginning of like a Charles Dickens book. Both her mother and her paternal grandmother die 2 days later. So she's born and then loses two very influential women in her life.
Well, they weren't influential to her at the time. She didn't have time to.
But they would have been, like would
That's
be
fair.
intimate, right?
That's fair.
Um, within 2 days of her death. So Papa Roosevelt kind of just he is heartbroken. He doesn't know what to do. He can't even look at the baby without picturing his wife. He won't even call her by her name because she does have her mother's name. He calls her Baby Lee. Like he can't, he just can't. So he leaves her in the care of his sister, Anna Roosevelt. And for the next 2 years, baby Alice lives happily with Anna Roosevelt while dad is like going west to find himself again and do the things, right?
This is very Jane Eyre. This is very like not Jane Eyre of Jane Eyre, but like the kids in the house that she's being the governess of.
Right? Like, is
Yeah.
that not the plot line for so many stories of the last several hundred years
I
worth of
mean, look,
dramatic storytelling?
the Bronte sisters had a heavy hand in her biography, let's be honest.
There you go. Yeah, okay. So, according to the National Park Services, quote, after her mother's death, Alice, known as Baby Lee, lived with her aunt, Anna Bammy Roosevelt, while her father started a ranching
Bammy?
venture in the Dakota Territory. Bammy was like her nickname,
Oh, okay.
Bamie.
Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
that's just all right. You don't hear it often, right?
I've never heard it before as a nickname, so yeah. I'm unsure on the origins, but there you have it. Uh, so dad, he starts a ranching venture in the Dakota Territory, and then once Theodore remarried and moved back to Oyster Bay, Alice moved in with him and his new wife, Edith Kermit Caro, at Sagamore Hill. Alice loved her aunt and called her Aunt Bi. It's likely that she spent the rest of her life trying to recreate the love and stability that she had in those first few years with her aunt. One source
Hmm.
says that she actually would often prefer to stay with the aunt whenever possible, either the aunt or her grandparents, the remaining grandparents. She didn't have a great relationship with her stepmother, which I'll get into in just a moment. But what I find really interesting is that given, given her station, even before he was president, you would have thought that she would have had some sort of structured education, whether it be tutors or boarding school or whatever, but that is not the case. She she didn't. Let me
Oh,
just go on by saying, considering the relationship with her stepmother, it was always strained and it was never really great. So I would imagine that she did whatever was necessary to do what she wanted and not with her stepmother. It's worth noting that her father was a bit standoffish and her stepmother was once a romantic rival to her mother, and of which, she never knew her mother, but she knew that. And so it kind of sets the stage for a very um not great relationship, a very tense relationship. And her stepmother is known for being like really able to make any situation sort of uncomfortably awkward. So,
I
you have
mean,
that
I
to deal
too
with
have that
as well.
gift, but it's not something I strive for. It's natural. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
born
but
with
I
it.
think maybe it's Maybelline. I think in this case, it's not that charming awkwardness. I think her mother was just a very still-willed, I don't want to say standoffish, but she just was not like the warm, inviting person you would want to be
The
in the circle of.
stereotypical stepmother.
Yeah, I'm imagining like Cinderella's stepmother. And I know that that's probably very not correct, and I'm probably not doing this woman justice at all, but from everything I read about the relationship, there was no kindness towards each other. So just keep all that in mind. The New York Times article that I mentioned in my sources earlier, was both about Alice and her most recent biographer, had this to say. As Theodore Roosevelt made fast political progress from New York City police commissioner to Rough Rider governor and then vice president under William McKinley, Alice, with a love of reading and wordplay but little schooling, developed into what Corderay says as, quote, a female caricature of her father's most criticized traits, impetuosity, stubbornness, and insensitivity. When McKinley was shot, Alex experienced sheer rapture, her own words, and danced a jig.
So, okay. I remember hearing a pastor once say that your children are all of your faults, all combined, walking around on two legs in front of you.
I would say this is a perfect example of that. And there are some of my sources talked about how Alice really idolized her father, even though they didn't have that, like, he wasn't super snuggly and he wasn't into telling bedtime stories and things like that, but she really admired him, vehemently so later in life. Like,
Okay.
she was probably his biggest supporter. When he became president in 1901, just 8 days after McKinley was shot, um, Roosevelt is sworn into office and she makes her debut at the White House. She's like 17. In fact,
I'm just
on
trying to think
January,
of myself at 17, given the keys to the White House. I would either have been completely on top, like on point with like all of the P's and Q's, or I'd be unhinged. Like there's no, it's either or, and it's really gonna be a switch moment.
well, stick around for a moment. On January 3rd, 1902, the Roosevelt White House hosted Alice's debutante ball as one of its first large social gatherings. This was a chance for Alice to shine and shine on her own without the the
Wicked
shadow of her
stepmom.
father
Oh, okay, and that.
and the wicked stepmom, right? Like, she is coming out to public, right? The date was strategic in scheduling. The event was scheduled close to the Christmas holiday so that all of the eligible young men could attend without interrupting their schooling. Like,
Well
someone knew
done.
what was up.
Yeah,
Well done, right?
that's a White House staffer who's done an event or two and just gone,
Mm-hmm.
I need a good guest list.
I know what's going on here. The ball was held in the East Room of the White House and it hosted some 600 people. Alice would dance the evening away to music of the United States Marine Band, and she would dance with many of the men of high society, including her distant cousin, 19-year-old Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. This was touted as an
Touted?
event. Tooted, toted, touted. I
Touted.
have such a hard time with
No,
that
it's
word.
fine. I mean,
Touted,
maybe it was farted.
touted. No, touted is right. Tooted is what I said. Touted is right. This was touted as an event not seen since the days of Dolly Madison, which now makes me even more curious about Dolly Madison. Like, I know very little about her and I need to know more, and this is just adding fuel to that fire. Alice's debutante ball helped launch a lifelong relationship with the press. They immediately nicknamed her Princess Alice, and her celebrity status is born. She would later in life go on to be called the Other Washington Monument, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
From there, it didn't take long for her to enter the international stage. One of her first ventures was christening a ship belonging to Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany.
Oh,
Yeah. The yacht was later named for her, and he had a photo of her installed in the ship.
that's the creepy part. You
Hey,
took it
just a
too
little
far
bit.
there. Just naming it, okay, great. But now, like, you say picture installed, but I'm imagining shrine.
I'm also imagining Shrine, if we're honest. That was kind of what I pictured. Like, I wanted to know, is it floor to ceiling, or is it just like in a little alcove? How does it look? I did not
Right.
Google it.
Are there other
Yeah.
photos near it? What are the votive candles?
Is there a statuette somewhere?
What is that incense?
Anyway,
Anyhow, carry on.
it's her favorite perfume, of course.
Oh, yes.
Um, It's safe to say that upon her father's presidency, she becomes an overnight icon, both with fashion and her witty, outgoing, non-conforming sense of self. The New York Times article goes on to say that the new president is said to have remarked to the writer Owen Wister, I can be president of the United States or I can attend to Alice. I cannot possibly do both.
Boom. That's the quote I had at the very beginning. That is,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Iconic,
Yeah.
right? Please allow me to regale you with why I chose this woman. The beloved, and by beloved, I mean the people of America and the world at large, the press, everybody loved this first daughter. She becomes the first woman to drive the 45 miles in a car from Newport to Boston. She chewed gum. Oh my. She rode in
Scandalous.
cars with men. Gasp. She wore pants, partied with the Vanderbilts, smoked in public, and when her father told her that no daughter of his would smoke under his roof, Alice climbed to the roof of the White House to smoke above it. And I love that for her.
I mean, look, she's following the rules. She understood the assignment. What more do you want, Father Dearest?
I did what I was told. I was not under your roof. I'm on it. She carried a pet snake named Emily Spinach to parties in her purse, as well as a dagger and a copy of the Constitution. Sometimes she'd wear Emily up her arm like an accessory. She ran up large debts playing poker, betting with the bookies, and buying clothes. And here is Theresa. In a nutshell, she had a needle-pointed pillow in her home that said, if you haven't got anything nice to say about anyone, come and sit here by me.
Oh, I love her. I love her.
Right? She loved the limelight. She was known to call in tips about her whereabouts so she could get the cash money for the reward. I here for it. Love her to death. She would become the first female celebrity of the 20th century. Today, we would definitely call her an influencer. In fact, the TikTok that I was watching about her, the creator, and off the top of my head, I don't remember her name, the creator is pretending to be her doing a live. And it was hysterical. I laughed so hard. I will share it with you when I find it again because it was just brilliant. Papa President figures out pretty quick that he can keep her in check and out of most of the mischief if he gives her political jobs and functions to handle. So, for
Okay.
example, he begins to call upon his daughter to act as a White House hostess for formal occasions. And Teddy super values this in her. He sees her as a very worthy substitute should he not be able to attend an event.
Now,
He
what does
also begins
stepmom think
sending
of
Alice.
this?
I'm unclear. It seems to me that oftentimes Alice would step up or step in when stepmom was either unavailable or sick. But I also, the way that I understand it is that Teddy Roosevelt figured out, like, okay, we have to give her a job. Like, if we give her something to do, she will stop doing these scandalous things long enough to get the task at hand done. Also, she is charming, and there's not much that he can do without the press getting wind of it, and then the American people losing their ever-loving goodness over it because they adore her. Like, to no end, they adore her. So he figures out he's got to do something. So whether stepmom likes it or not is really irrelevant.
Okay.
He sees her as a tool and he uses it. I think by her popularity, it automatically boosts his popularity, if not for the wrong reasons, it's still working, you know? He successfully sends her on a trip in 1903 to Puerto Rico. Her father wrote her saying, you were of real service down there, and your presence was accepted and as a great compliment. And I just loved that he acknowledged that he gave her a task and she completed the task. And not only that, but she charmed the Puerto Ricans in a way that was very useful and very delighted by them. By 1905, she had proved so successful in performing official duties that her father sent her with a large peace delegation to Asia as he concluded peace discussions after the Russo-Japanese War. The other delegates to accompany her included Secretary of War William Howard Taft and her friend and a love interest, Ohio Representative Nicholas Longworth. They traveled to Japan, China, Korea, and the Philippines, and they met tons of officials. They attended all sorts of events. She was treated like royalty and showered with gifts that her friend, William D. Straight, called her Alice in Plunderland. The American press praised the first daughter, and the trip turned out to be a success in a lot of different ways. She would essentially return home as an engaged woman, and the news was publicly announced on December 13th, 1905, after weeks of guessing and years of the press speculating that each man she'd been seen with was the one. She married Nicholas Longworth on February 17th, 1906, and the coverage of both the engagement and the wedding dominated the press coverage, like insanely. After the gorgeous morning wedding, where it is said that she looked as stunning as ever, she, the newly minted Longworths, held a wedding breakfast where, in true Alice form, she cut the cake with the sword of one of the military aides nearby.
Yes.
And I just love that. She would go on to have one daughter and at least one affair. In fact, though her husband delighted in the child, even though he most likely knew she was really the daughter of Senator William Borah of Idaho, uh, um, Alice, okay, so little backstory here. Her husband, Nicholas, was kind of this womanizing go-getter, and Alice didn't seem to mind, nor did Nicholas seem to mind that Alice had balances. Where it really mattered to Alice was his politics. So I just need to like put that out there. So she seems to have kind of fallen in love with this senator of Idaho, given his great he was a great orator and he favored prohibition, and he was also against the League of Nations, which she was as well.
Okay.
So they had some, some leverage, not leverage with each other, but they could be on the same
Commonality.
level with each other. Yeah. Privately, William would entertain her with stories of his youthful lawyering days with the cattle ranchers and miners in his state. And the two would frequently send letters back and forth across town, and this sustained their discreet affair. They had a mutual respect of both English literature and the memory of her great father, Theodore Roosevelt, after he passed. Unfortunately, Bora would die in 1940, 9 years after her husband died in 1931. The daughter, Paulina, would die only in her 30s from a combination of medication and alcohol, which is really quite
Oof.
sad and goes back to her earlier life. I mean, but she did spend the rest of her years raising her granddaughter, Joanna Strum. She died February 20th, 1982, at the age of 96 years old. I read a fact that said she saw at least 18 presidential administrations in her lifetime.
Nice.
Right? I have a few more fun facts. She is buried in Rock Creek Cemetery, that's located in Washington, D.C. The White House history speaks to her in the best way ever, saying, quote, long after the conclusion of Theodore Roosevelt's presidency, she remained a popular attraction as she was regularly maintained a reputation for her sharp wit and scandalous behavior. In her later years, she continued to be a favorite guest at the White House, meeting with Presidents John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. Whether she was participating in politics, changing definitions of proper behavior for women, or making headlines for her impersonation of Eleanor Roosevelt, they were frenemies, as we mentioned earlier. Alice remained a fascinating fixture in Washington social circles. One thing is for certain, by the end of her 96 years, she had definitely earned her title as the other Washington Monument.
Mm.
I love this so much. Every president from Truman to Ford made sure to pay homage at Longworth's Massachusetts Avenue home on February 12th, her birthday. Nixon, one of Alice's personal favorites, came even at the height of the Watergate scandal. And I just have to say, if you wield the kind of power to make a president come down to your home on your birthday to wish you a happy tidings, you must be
While
something
he's
special.
in the middle of his own shenanigans.
Mm-hmm. When Senator Joseph McCarthy launched the communist witch hunt in the early 50s, he made the mistake of calling her Alice rather than Mrs. Longworth. She sharply retorts with, quote, you will not call me Alice. The truckman, the trashman, and the policeman on my block may call me Alice, but you may not.
Ooh.
Allthat'sinteresting.com said that the New York Herald printed a running score of her social life over the course of one 15-month period. It included 407 dinners, 350 balls, 300 parties, 680 teas, and 1,706 social calls. That is only over a 15-month period.
Now, no, see, I think that's where we differ because my anxiety levels I just won't.
True. But you are not a socialite in Washington, D.C. either.
Yeah, and I'm
You
also
know?
wasting my anxiety at work when I should be maybe saving it up for dinners and champagne.
Truly.
Okay,
Yeah, carrying
I
a
need to
snake in your purse.
reprioritize.
Please don't carry a snake in your purse. Pick something different, maybe a possum.
But I could name it Emily Spinach.
You could. That's true, you
I
could.
have raccoons.
See? You could name them Emily Spinach. There you go, make a hat. Later in life,
No, they're
no, no,
Mama
a living hat.
Raccoon.
They're not.
A living
They're
hat.
not.
Okay.
Yeah, a
Hey, my
living
hat
hat.
has rabies. Do you want to get close?
Exactly. They're friendly, don't worry. They only nibble a little. Later in life, Alice recalled her debaucherous teenage years, saying, quote, I must admit a sense of mischief does get hold of me from time to time. I am a hedonist. I have an appetite for being entertained. Quite possibly my favorite of her charms was that she was banned from the White House twice after her father left office. Once in 1909 for burying a voodoo doll of Secretary of War William Howard Taft's wife, Nellie, in the yard, and a second time for consistently bad-mouthing new President Woodrow Wilson. I love
Yeah, I
her
love this. I
so
love
much.
this.
Yeah, I have pictures. You want to put a face with the names here?
Please and thank you.
You're welcome. Allow me to pick my screen for you. Here you go. You're gonna love these. Here's the first couple.
Okay, now the second one I know I've definitely seen. So the first one, she's got a straw hat, um, the collar that goes all the way over her neck with the white, like almost like an ascot, and she's in like what looks like a blazer, black and white, and she's just kind of staring down the camera like, I wish you would. And then
I will eat you for dinner.
yeah. And then the second one, she's looking down the bridge of her nose. Her hair is in this fantastic
Gibson
bun.
girl.
Gibson girl, that's what it is. I was like, bun over her forehead. I was like, that doesn't translate. But she's in a very Victorian dress with like the straight up like cameo at her neck, her arms crossed, and she's
hmm
just kind of like, I could be drunk by now. That's the look on her face.
Yep, I loved the quote about it. A quintessentially impertinent looking Alice Roosevelt Longworth. I love this one. Here she
Oh,
is
she's
wearing all
older.
furs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one is more like, is there a sale on at Macy's or is there not? I can't remember if it's time yet.
Mm-hmm. Gorgeous hat, big bow, the whole thing. I love this one. Here she is with the
Oh,
parasol
that
in the
is a
gardens.
very my favorite or my Fair
My
Lady.
Fair Lady. Mm-hmm. Wicker chair, the whole bit. She's wearing
Yeah.
what looks, I can't tell for certain, but are you getting white feather boa
Oh, that is
also
straight up a
around the neck?
feather boa around her neck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
And
is a
then this one,
sensory
I
nightmare,
love
but
this one. I agree with you. She obviously did not have some of the same conditions that we do. Um, and this image.
oh, that is her like basically crawling out of the foliage at some sort of botanical garden where she is going to scare the poop out of a cameraman.
This was at one of the gardens, I believe, at the White House shortly before it was deconstructed. I don't know what it
Ah.
is now, but that's her. Yeah, that's Alice Roosevelt Longworth.
Well,
In a nutshell, there's hours of information and tons of stuff you can learn about her, but that's her in a nutshell.
I'm stoked that you shared her with me because now I can cross her off my list and I don't feel cheapened at all. Like I got to learn something super neato. Um you did a story that was basically me and I did a story that reminded me of you.
Oh, we're winning this week.
We are winning. Um I I'll start with my inspiration before I tell you. I'll tell you my source. Well, okay, my sources have the name.
The face she's making as she thinks this through, you guys, is absolute gold.
Okay. I'm gonna do Elisabetta Sirani.
Okay.
Okay. My sources, Art, Her Story, Elisabetta Sirani of Bologna, 1632 to 1665 by Adelina Modesti. Smarthistory.org, Elisabetta Sirani. Portia Wounding Her Thigh by Dr. Maura Gleason. The art newspaper, The Life of Elisabetta Sirani, The Best Brush of Bologna, explored in a new publication by Breeze Barrington. And Breeze Barrington, good grief, that is a comic book superhero name if there ever was one. And
Yeah, it
then,
is.
right? Then we have an arthistoryproject.com. Uh, they did an article, Elisabetta Sirani, The Mysterious Death of the Young Art Teacher.
Okay.
Now, my inspiration for this, it's basically like I kind of went down a weird rabbit hole on both Etsy. Well, it started on TikTok, but then I went to Etsy. There's a series of creators on both of those that are creating clothing or selling clothing. Now, the clothing itself has a series of paintings, and the paintings are rich and moody and of the Baroque or Renaissance era. They're like it's just the masters paintings, right? And
I love this.
they have like paintings of women engaged in violent activities.
Okay.
Like one might be the image of Judith beheading Holofernes, and it has a
I
text
love that
overlay
image.
and it says girls will be girls.
Yes.
And then there's like another one, and like there's another one of Timoclea who's pushing her rapist down a well and then later is going to stone him to death. And it's
Hey, look, double tap. You got to make sure he's dead.
dude, right? And so I'm kind of here for classic art with like a feminist Tarantino flair. Like that's,
That's this episode's title. Classic art with a feminist Tarantino flair.
I
Yes, that
mean,
is my favorite kind of art.
so yeah. Okay. So, and then it was just like, okay, wait, hold up. Let's go back one and let's learn about one of these women because I'm not saying I bought a t-shirt because I didn't yet, but I'm just like, okay, I got another backstory. So
Mm-hmm.
Elisabetta Sirani was born Friday, January 8th, 1638, in Bologna, which is in northern Italy, and it's the most important papal state after Rome. So, a highfalutin spot, right? Now, she's the eldest of five children.
Did she go to boarding school, unlike my girl Alice?
No, but she does get her own education. So I will elaborate a
Thank the
bit,
Lord.
right? And I think she actually has a good relationship with her dad, which I think is a first for me in these kind of stories.
Yeah, we don't have many. I can only think of one off the top of my head.
So,
Um, the Red Cross woman.
yeah, Clara Barton. And then you
Yeah,
covered her. Anyhow, um,
and I forgot her first name just now.
but I'm with you. This
Go
is why
me.
we're a team. I might
Mm-hmm.
have some issues, but you have some issues, and our issues overlap, and we're kind of there to help each other. Um,
In fact.
right now, she's the eldest, right? She's a daughter of an established Bolognese artist and merchant, a dude named Giovanni Andrea Serrani. Um, her dad is one of the best art professors and appraisers in the city, and he trains her in drawing and printmaking. He gives her like a solid background in art theory. And he himself was apprenticed to a man named Guido Rini. Does that name ring a bell? Because you actually studied art.
Yeah, all of these names ring a bell.
Great, because I might be making them up as far as I know. Now, Rini is like the most important painter in Italy at the time, and her dad is Rini's closest collaborator. So that is just how involved in this mix that she is. Now, Giovanni Andrea, he runs a very successful printing or printmaking and painting studio. He initially teaches her in Reni's idealizing classical style. And this is before she develops her own personal and very expressive and dynamic manner. She's considered by her contemporaries as like a grandmaster. And at the same time, her works, like she does several of like the Madonna and Child, are intimate expressions full of human emotions played out in affectionate gestures and warm gazes. Like her art is absolutely incredible. Her mentor and biographer, Count Carlo Caesar Malvesa, is a close family friend, and he states that many of her Madonnas are the most beautiful to have been seen since those of the great Guido, which is high frickin' praise. Now,
Considering how many gorgeous Madonnas are out there.
exactly. Like this is kind of a crowded marketplace.
To be
And
considered the best of that says a lot about your
oh,
skill set.
and she's probably like in her late teens, early
16.
20s,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like so she's a young pup. She's still wet behind her ears. Now, she's also one of the first women to practice printmaking. And so 1654, she's an independent professional. I should have looked this up. Watch me butcher this foreign word. Peintre gravier. You know what? I'm going to roll with it. That's what it is. If that's your language, my apologies. Um, she becomes the master of the Sirani workshop in her mid 20s. And she earns this because her father has painful arthritic gout and then it distorts his hands. And so he has to retire. So she is supporting the family.
Get it,
She
girl.
takes on his apprentices. And at the same time, she's teaching in her female art school and she's supporting her extended family with
Yes.
her work.
In a time and a place where often women are regulated to prostitution and homemaking.
Exactly. Or you think about all of the great masters that we think of, that we celebrate, that we know off the top of our heads, that didn't make a dime, died penniless. And she's like,
Most of them.
I got the mortgage. I can support Auntie. I got grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Oh, I love her.
her paintings were paid for in all kinds of ways. Often it's in expensive jewelry or gold, and she ends up displaying these proudly in glass cases in the Sirani reception room, which I'm just like, holy crap.
I love that.
And now she's practicing in the middle of the 17th century. It's high Baroque, it's theatrical style with rhetorical visual language. Historically, this is a period of the Counter Reformation. This is when the Catholic Church is at its height in employing many artists in its theological and pastoral mission to bring people back to the true faith. So the church is investing in its community to get these fantastic pieces of art. So artists at this point are counting on the continual work, not only from the church, but also from private patrons who are seeking these devotional pictures for their home. And she's renowned for her sacred, I'm going to say cabinet photos. I'm not even going to go into the Italian word because my apologies to the Catholic people or to the Italian people on the whole. Her work in depicting the Madonna, the Holy Family, the saints, the doctors of the church like John the Baptist or Mary Magdalene, they are these gorgeous paintings that she's creating that her patrons are buying up just so they can put it, in their homes at their altars. They've got a place to pray in front of. Now, as you were saying earlier, this is a time where women didn't have these opportunities to pursue a profession or a career. They're also typically denied an education or training. And so I in my article, I didn't have, sex work, but it was basically marry or enter a convent. And here she is. She's
I mean, but
living.
at least in Italy, if you're gonna
No,
enter a convent, then you're probably gonna be living your best life.
I mean, yes, truth. You're not necessarily wearing the hair shirt and just praying for 19 hours a day. The crazy thing about where she's born is she's in a very progressive city. It's got an incredibly liberal attitude towards female education creativity. Bologna is renowned for its humanist tradition of learned women who taught and published. And it was the center of the largest school of female artists in Italy. And it would have been the most active between the 16th and 18th centuries. So she is in the best place at the best time for her skill set.
That is so often not the case with our characters. Looking at you,
No,
Kim Chaka,
the Kamchatka was not the best.
or ever in the right place at the right time.
They made everything the worst place at the worst time.
God bless them.
Now, as far as, Elisabetta Sirani's education, there's evidence that suggests that she could read the classics in Greek and Latin, and that there's records of her reading the matter, or that her reading matter survives in the inventories of the Sirani Family Library. Like somehow or another, that's documented. And we see her education and influence in these subject matters that she chooses. So she has this artist father who helps establish her as a successful painter and a printmaker in this heavily male dominated profession. And she's got this background where she can actually back it up with her brain.
Get it, girlfriend.
Now, remember how I said earlier that she taught at a woman's art school?
Yes.
She develops what is considered a matrilineal pedagogic model, pedagogic model. That's the word, where girls are taught to draw by women rather than their husbands or their brothers or their fathers, like she was. She opens the studio to female students, and this includes her two younger sisters, Barbara and Anna Maria, both of which those names seem a little anachronistic. But to
I
be
was actually
fair,
just thinking, are we in Middle America in
no, believe it
1950?
or not, but I think this is up there with the Tiffany problem. You've heard of the Tiffany problem,
Yes,
where
yes,
there's
the Tiffany
Tiffany's
problem.
around this age, and we just kind of
There's
have a
Tiffany's
hard
in like
time.
the biblical era. Yeah, it
Right.
doesn't
And you're
sit
just like,
right.
no,
No.
no. But anyhow, she's got two siblings that have modern sounding names, and she teaches them. And she's also teaching a lot of noble women during this time. Elisabetta or Elisabetta is basically an influential role model that's pioneering the way for these generations that are coming after her. And in 1678, Malvasia writes, there have been and are still numerous women and young girls who follow the example that is most of this most worthy painter. And he mentions 11 of these women and all that have basically happened because she started this school. Whether daughters of the artist or nobility, all of these women worked as professional artists, not just in Bologna, but throughout Italy.
Yes. Get it,
So
ladies.
they did it. Now, she doesn't marry, never has children. So basically, there's a lot of art scholars that say because she didn't invest in passing down her own genes and doing the standards, that she's able to balance this world, and just invest in her own career. Now, later in the 1700s, she's recorded as a member of the Painters Academy of St. Luke's in Rome. And this basically is an indicator of her acceptance in this male dominated industry. And we would say that, like, hell yeah, she succeeded. She got into the boys' club. And that's true. And women had been accepted as members of academia since 1607. But unlike their male counterparts, they're not permitted to attend the meetings and theoretical classes. So there's still
This
an
checks.
uneven playing field. And
Mm-hmm.
when we think about her access to the academic training, especially drawing from the nude, women couldn't do so because of propriety and decorum.
Yet we can be the models.
Yeah, but we can't be the one in the
My
paintbrush.
hypocrisy knows no bounds.
But see, that's the thing, right? It's the female gaze. We got to watch where that goes. We got to police it.
Look, Stanley Tucci cannot exist everywhere, okay?
I love that reference. Well
You're
done.
welcome.
So even with the obstacles that Elisabetta is facing, she goes on to complete around 200 canvases, and there's about 130 that are still floating around.
I love that.
She's
I
got
didn't realize
50.
she had that many.
Oh my gosh. She has 15 prints, innumerable drawings, and tons of wash sketches. About 70% of her pieces are signed, and she ends up averaging about 20 canvases a year, which is remarkable for any artist. So she's extremely productive. She demonstrates an extraordinary ability to execute at speed, and she's renowned for being able to finish a portrait bust in one sitting.
Wow, that's impressive.
So a Florentine painter named Baldassare Franchini, the intonation of my voice going up shows that I am not confident in saying that word out loud. He
Question mark?
observes, yep,
I
Elisabetta
feel
at
like
work.
that's right.
I mean, we're going with it.
Yeah.
So
Listen, we're English speakers.
he
Please
watches
forgive
her
us.
in 1662, and he claims she's the best brush now in Bologna. And her elegant canvases reveal expressive and broad brushwork, fluid impasto, rich coloring, and deep shadows. So her contemporaries, and I don't understand enough about art, they describe her style as masculine. And I don't necessarily understand what it means to have a masculine style. They describe it as virile and grand. And Padre Bonaventura BC writes that she painted like a man with much boldness and invention.
Hmm.
So I
I
don't,
mean, it's funny that you would say that because moments ago when you were talking about the school that she had for all
yeah,
women, I was thinking to myself how that could differ from men. Like how art made by women for women would differ from how art made by men would look.
yeah,
And and to me, like this is gonna sound so, I'm not even sure, like it's gonna sound so stupid, but I
you're in
would
a safe
think,
place.
thanks. Um, women art by women created, like for women created by women, is probably going to be considered softer lines, more muted tones without the boldness that is like to say to paint Alexander or something like that. Like you would suspect them to pick something less
They only
intense
paint puppies.
and flowers, right? So I can kind of see the difference, but at the same time, like, what's to stop a woman from painting whatever she wanted? And why would her lines look any different from a
Right.
man's lines?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say, unless, of course, they're meaning like subject matter, in which case, okay, then maybe other female artists at the time weren't producing similar art as hers in its kind of in your faceness, right? Like
Fair.
I'm not really sure how to say what I'm thinking, but I'm kind of on the right track. And so that would be my best guess because art doesn't seem like a place where it's male or female.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Either
that,
way,
yeah, anyway.
she's described as one of the first women artists to be publicly acknowledged by both colleagues and critics as a female virtuoso. And that bothers me. Female programmer, female woman CEO. How about just artist? Just
I could not
virtuoso.
agree with you more. Our gender doesn't determine what we can do.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're talking about labor. That's
I mean, that
different.
that does play a crucial role. But beyond that, now her favorite subjects in her paintings are women, whether that's, sacred, secular, mythological, allegoric, all of it. She likes using women subjects. And her history painting celebrates their strength, their dignity, their intelligence and courage. And she has this habit of pitting them against male aggression. Now, the female Fortes who she depicts as these historical agents, they include, the Judith, who slays the enemy Holofernes, the classical ones like Timoclea. Are you familiar with the Timoclea one?
Timothy is not the one that brought the head. to
No,
the captain, right? Okay.
no. Timoclea pushes her rapist down a well and stones
Oh,
him.
down the well and then stones him. Yeah. Okay, that's right. You
Okay.
had mentioned that earlier. And I'm picturing the painting, but I think what I'm picturing is not her. So,
I mean, yeah, I'll show you
anyway.
in a second. And then she also has Portia, the wife of Brutus,
Okay.
et tu, Brute. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and in
It's
this
not
work,
that day. It's not March 15th.
in that work, her work bears comparison between another very strong female artist at the point, Artemisia Gentileschi. I butchered that. But she also does a lot of anti-heroes. So she does Delilah, Cleopatra, Circe, and she's highlighting these anti-heroes' virtues rather than their vices. So she's really celebrating women regardless of where they found themselves.
As it should be.
Now, what I find crazy enough is many of her contemporaries are painting similar things. So we have Portia, the wife of Brutus. Now, many of them will paint Portia at the time where she learns Brutus is murdered and she's trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I cross my own name off the census?
Right.
When Elisabetta ends up painting her, she paints Portia wounding her thigh, and that depicts a story that's told in Plutarch's Parallel Lives. And Portia, wife of Marcus Brutus, she's known for having conspired and carried out the assassination of Julius Caesar. And according to Plutarch, she's aware of Brutus's plans and she's eager to prove her ability to be as confident. Now, Portia planned to prove her trustworthiness by sending her servants away and using a small knife and cutting a gash into her thigh. And when Brutus sees the wounds, she described her ability to endure pain as evidence of her trustworthiness. And so ultimately, she becomes a secret keeper.
Of course, because that's how you do it.
I mean, look, I too can withstand lots of pain. I am not good at keeping secrets, but so I don't understand the correlation that she was trying to make, but she made it to him and he believed her. Now, Plutarch ends up describing her as being addicted to philosophy and full of courage. And this description departs from the expectation of ancient Roman wives who were believed to have lower intellects and supposed to be submissive to their husbands. So, this writing is a rich source for Italian artists of 17th century Europe who produced works that featured Greek and Roman stories. When Sirani paints her, she positions Portia's room and makes everything close to her. So you can see her, you can witness her plan. She's sitting on a mound of red and gold silk, and she's got a canvas at her right side. And she's propping up one of her sandaled feet in a chair. And she's raised her right arm and extended her leg to create these diagonal lines. And she's urging us to take in the sumptuous red and white gown and her green shawl with the gold brocade. Like there's so much rich detail in this. And she's wearing a jewel encrusted gold chain that wraps around her bare shoulder and drapes across her chest. The skin, the bare skin is emphasized, drawing our attention to the serene expression on her face and the wound on her leg. And it's just incredible because in the room behind her, you see a very different scene. You see her three maidservants. They're oblivious to what's going on. So
This
she's
checks.
the heroine, both physically and emotionally, apart from these other women. Like there's such a stark contrast. So you
Okay.
see that beautiful chain that's just ripped, and then you see the wound there. Apparently, that's the handle of a toilet piece, which I would not have clocked as a toilet implement. But the look on her
Why does she
face,
have that?
that's part where she got the weapon from that she's used to get herself for whatever reason.
Oh, okay.
And then you have her three servants back here, and they're spinning silk,
Yeah,
but
they are.
they're just gossiping and having a great time. And she's so set apart, and everything about her is very different than her servants behind her.
Hmm. She's gorgeous. I kind of just am the billowing sleeves, the red and white gown like you mentioned earlier, but I cannot get over the sandals.
Aren't those gorgeous?
Yeah, they're sock sandals.
Well, they're more like yeah, they are very enclosed. So more open-toed flat boot.
Yeah, yeah, that is the best way to explain it. And she does have such a serene look on her face.
Yeah, not somebody who's there like, I'll show my husband that I can deal with secret keeping by causing myself pain.
See, I can do it.
Right? Anything you can do, I can do bleeding.
And backwards.
And heels. So basically, that whole thing really is very different because it focuses on her bravery and her willingness to take agency over her own life, as opposed to her trying to opt out of life. And all of the women that she paints that are involved in these grotesque dealings, they all have faces of serenity and peace, which is very jarring. But it causes you to really dive in and really analyze the painting because it's such a sharp juxtaposition. And one of the sources I have said thematically, it doesn't matter if she's pulling from history or if she's pulling from, you know, mythology, all of them are linked in how they're portrayed. They're calm, graceful, beautiful women whose heroism still stems from their steadfast commitment to virtue, family, and nation.
I was just thinking, I bet you if a man had painted that same portrait, her face would have been so different because he would never understand that woman's heart in the prospect of I will do what needs to be done.
Right.
And that does walk with that piece of like, yep, I've made my decision. Let us
Yeah,
carry on.
this is what I'm gonna do now. Um,
Hmm.
okay, here is Judas beheading her dude.
You know what? The
So,
artwork in that one is so different from like Carrievo's or any of the other masters
mhm,
painting similar works.
yeah, but you see all of the
I
beautiful fabric, all of that. And this is
and
just like moments after the assassination.
Yeah, I'm
And
trying to understand. Is that a hair or a turban that she has?
that is some sort of turban piece. Like you see her hair underneath here, but this is like
Yeah,
red
okay.
and blue with, golded, gilded,
And
kind of.
again,
Yeah.
she, she's got amazing sandals on among the many different textures and fabric choices. And there are two young, for lack of a better understanding, I'm going to call them page boys in the image,
Mhm.
that are holding torches, and her maid, as always, helping to deal with the problem.
But
Oh, they're on a stage. Did you notice that?
yeah, they're on some kind of wooden platform, and the maid is kind of
Yeah, I
helping her
just noticed
slide
the
the head into
faces.
a bag,
Yeah, can always count on the trusty maid.
right? Someone's got to have a bag.
Mm. Always.
Yeah. But it's still fascinating because it's still like there's a look of peace. And some of the other artists that tackled the exact same subject, there's like anger or malice or rage or a need for revenge. And you have Judith here who's just like, I feel better about my life. Thanks for letting me get that out.
You.
Yeah, I needed that.
He had it
Just nice
coming.
deep breath. Now,
Look me in
many
the
of her
eyes, look me in the
patrons,
eyes.
yeah, deep breath, deep breath. Ready? We're going to do this. We're going to put it in a bag now. We're done.
Okay.
Okay. Her patrons include doctors, lawyers, priests, cardinals, basically like the who's who of everybody. Um, she's even courted by royalty and by diplomatic leaders throughout Italy, all of Europe. Even the Medicis, there's a Duchess of Bavaria and the King
Mm.
of Poland. They all want to own a painting by her hand.
Well, I mean, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. But again, this isn't Picasso's legacy here. You know what I mean? Like, This isn't, we're not talking about Van Gogh. We're talking about like this woman who's celebrated during her time.
It's about dang time.
Oh, and we almost lost her after she passed because, you didn't know about her. I didn't know her name.
I've I've heard of her. I didn't know her name. I had one of my last art history classes had a whole section on specifically Judith and
Ah,
the painters that had done her. But sadly, I will say that the specific point painting that always sticks out to me is Carriero's.
mm,
So I will admit to not being a great feminist on that part. I just really
that's
love the
fair.
colors of his. So,
Yeah, you know what? That's okay.
yeah.
Now, what's cool to me is that we know who many of her patrons were, and we also know the breadth of her production because of the work that she did in documenting everything in her own diary. Um, and
Dear
she
diary,
kept,
today I painted for the Medicis. Medicis.
yeah, like truly, and that kind of that work is published by Malvasia later on when he publishes something on Bolognese painters. And she'd carefully documented each of her commissions, describing the subject matter, her how she conceptualized it, her interpretation, and she identified 110 of her own clients.
110 of them.
110 out
That's
of
impressive.
no, I don't know if she sold any of her drawings. I'm sure she did, but out of 200 paintings, we have 110 clients.
That's impressive.
Now,
And you know some of those clients were repeat clients.
oh hell yeah, you
Yeah.
got to have a gallery wall. We
Of
also know about her
course.
marketing strategies.
Oh, do tell me.
Okay,
Do go
this is
on.
exciting. She has a lost leader. So she would do things like she'd invite clients to come watch her work in the studio. Mind you, she's like finishing a painting in a sitting kind of deal. So they're watching her like speed paint and like kick ass. And another one thing that she would do, she would prominently use her signature. And she did this to really establish her own identity as separate from Rennie and her father and to promote herself as a prominent female artist. She also, this is the cool part, this is the lost leader part. She would diplomatically gift her paintings, her drawings, and her prints to patrons to cultivate future commissions.
So she is working like a modern textile designer today.
Yeah,
Like, hi, I'm up and coming in the gown world. I just wondered if maybe Beyonce would like one of my dresses.
yeah.
I love
And she
that.
does like temporary exhibitions. She does the whole nine yards. Like you think of what a modern painter would do to kind of establish themselves. She's doing that in the mid 1600s.
Minus Instagram
Yeah.
and still getting the word out. I love that for her.
And still courting nobility to get and come and get her works. Now, it's 1665. She's first touched by a mysterious ailment that takes her life. She has stomach pain that went away without any aid or any remedy, but it was the beginning of a quick change in her demeanor. She starts losing weight. She starts suffering bouts of melancholy, and her pain becomes more frequent and more intense. Her fingers turned purple, and finally, she received the sacraments from a local priest and dies. After postmortem examination, the family physician, Dr. Gallerati, declared that her death was the result of corrosive poison.
Oh, was she
Now,
painting
everyone
with
who
arsenic?
look, maybe. I almost doubt it because I feel like that's too new.
Too
Like, all right,
Victorian
that like
era.
too recent. Yeah, like this is
Mercury.
probably
Mercury would make more sense.
I mean, there's a lot of probably heavy metals that she's playing with to get the brilliant colors. I
Yeah.
don't know when lead-based paint started, but I'm pretty sure if it wasn't lead, it was probably something worse. Now, everyone who knew her had a theory about her death. Her father blames the maid. The maid's put on trial and acquitted. Um, Family friend Carlo Malvasia, the one who like kind of documents a lot of her stuff post mortem, he suspects a rejected lover. But more recently, historians are looking at the symptoms leading up to her death, and they blame the natural onset of peritonitis.
Which is what?
As soon as I was like, you know what? I didn't look that up. So allow me to do a quick
I know
Google.
she's going to ask me what peritonitis is, the same
And I'm
way
going to
that last
ignore
week
it.
I
Yeah.
asked her what urema is.
Right. It is redness and swelling or inflammation of the lining of your belly or abdomen, according to Johns
Hmm.
Hopkins Medicine. Seems reputable.
It's not Reddit, so I mean that's a
Right.
win.
We'll roll with it. Um, so that's obviously less dramatic, not as, you know, shocking, scintillating. Now she dies suddenly. She did die at age only 27. So she's pretty stinking young. She's still
Oh
like
wow.
a kid when you think about it.
I thought she had like been doing this for 50 years.
No, we only have 10
Okay.
years of her work. 200
So
paintings in
I
10
am no
years.
longer picturing an older woman wearing a caftan.
No, you're picturing someone who's like, but he didn't call me. He said he'd call me,
Yeah. Oh, well,
you
she
know?
didn't care if he didn't call her.
She was too busy painting pictures of women throwing men down wells. Now,
Priorities, Theresa, priorities.
the elders of Bologna gave their painter heroine a public civic funeral. There's grief-stricken citizens, especially the women. So women are flocking to this memorial service. And her services include a life-size effigy of the artist at her easel that was designed by Matteo Borboni. And the magnitude of her commemoration was unusual for any woman artist in the 17th century, let alone one who'd only painted for 10 years. She was
Well,
laid
she
to
knew what
rest.
was up.
She had everyone right where she needed them. She's laid to rest in the Chapel of the Rosary in Domen, Domincio, next to the tomb of Guido Reni, Bologna's other cultural hero.
Mm,
And that's
I
the story of
love
her.
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love, I love hearing about women who, despite their time and place, excel and then go on to help other women also. Like
Yep.
girl power to the max, sisters helping sisters. I am here for it.
And then let me get you the image of that she painted of Timoclea throwing her rapist down the well, because that one is chef's kiss. Now, this one, the look isn't quite so
Okay.
serene.
Okay, yeah,
You've
this
seen
is the
this
one I
image.
actually am I'm very familiar with this one. Yeah, okay. I lo I love the shocked look on his face.
Yeah, like, what do you mean I can't just have my way with women? And then,
It's a beautiful well too. He's
yeah,
got the
no,
red
it's,
cape on of like a Roman centurion
yeah.
type
And
character.
this great blue that just kind of stands in stark contrast against it.
Mm-hmm. And her darker gown as she's chucking
Oh,
him in.
yeah.
Stunning.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And the
I'm
headdress.
okay
Oh,
that she
I'm here
didn't
for
paint
it.
too
Yeah.
many nude men, you know? Like I feel like she knew her place and she honored it.
She excelled. Yeah, she really, really did. It's beautiful. And the fine details of everything, like the trees going off in the distance,
Yeah.
the water jug at the bottom to make it clear that we know it's a well, and the artwork, if you can actually see the artwork that's engraved on the well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it looks three-dimensional.
Oh, I love it. Ugh. Thank you for sharing her story and her art. I This is the image that I know very well of hers, not her Judith image, but I'm here for it
Yeah. So
100%. Get it, girlfriend.
I know. I know. I was so thrilled to see that. and to learn more about her and to kind of go through that whole bit.
Yes, I cannot agree with you more. You made me
Um,
so excited, I forgot about my own story.
Dude, that's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in for like unhinged history that typically includes women, I mean, we do a lot of women. We do a lot of the other unhinged bits. Then rate, review, subscribe, come join in. Maybe next week it'll be another episode on elephants. And on that note,
We talk about him a lot.
goodbye.
Bye.